the channel, Australia is playing Pakistan, the most awaited series, and guess what has happened? David Warner has scored a century. Okay, alright. There has been literally hundreds of centuries scored. Why am I talking about this century? Why am I making a video about it? Because of the drama that happened. I'm watching this match live right now. Warner is still playing. He's on 148. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. But let's just go back as to why this century is so special. Mitchell Johnson, one of the great Australian fast bowlers, just a couple of weeks ago, openly came in the newspaper and said, David Warner, why is this guy getting to choose his last test match being played in Sydney now? What exactly happened was, David Warner, this is probably his last series, and he requested that the last test match be played in Sydney, because that is his ground. And guess what? Cricket Australia actually obliged. And they said, okay, fine, David Warner, if you're going to retire, we are going to have the last test match in Sydney. Now, usually, Sydney does not get the last test match. If you see the history of Australian cricket, very rarely the last test match is played in Sydney. Usually the first test match starts in Sydney, and then you have Melbourne, and then you have Adelaide Oval, or the first match is Adelaide Oval. But Sydney, the last test match, no. So, Cricket Australia actually obliged to David Warner's request, and that is where Mitchell Johnson said that, David Warner, your last 3 years' performance has been absolutely shit. You have had an average of just 29 overseas in test matches and about 30 odd is your average playing in Australia. So why you are getting this ridiculous attention? Why you get to nominate your last, your farewell test match? Why do you get to nominate that? And he also said that now this was really, really hitting below the belt. I personally feel now David Warner was involved in the ball tampering sandpaper incident in South Africa. He, Steve Smith, they all were involved, right? And he said that, David Warner, you actually never took ownership of your role in that event where, the Australian team, under Steve Smith's leadership, they were rubbing the ball with a sandpaper to basically tamper the ball so the ball would swing or whatever, reverse swing or whatever, right? So after that, David Warner, Steve Smith, they all got reprimanded. They were banned for 1 year. There was a lot of controversy about Australia, the way they play cricket, blah, 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 blah. However, Steve Smith actually came on national television and he apologized. He took full responsibility that it happened under his leadership, and he was sorry and he cried and everything. But David Warner, which is actually a fact, he never came on television, or he actually never took that responsibility that yes, I was involved or I was aware of of this sandpaper tampering going on. So I think the match has just the match just ended. Day one had just ended. I feel like it's tea time. Okay, anyways, continuing. So Mitchell said that you've never even taken the full responsibility of that sandpaper incident. So how come a guy like you gets to nominate your last test match in which ground you want to play? Now, is it a big deal? I don't really know. I mean, okay, you play the last test match in Sydney or you play the last test match in Melbourne. I mean, who really gives a damn, right? But clearly, for Mitchell Johnson to go so personal and hit him below the belt and especially talk about the sandpaper incident, for which David Warner has already served his time, he's gone through humiliation, all of those things has happened. For him to bring that up, obviously there was something personal, right? So if you read and if you dug up a little bit more information, so basically what triggered Mitchell Johnson was actually the comment made by David Warner's wife, Candice. Now, there's always a woman behind the big wars, there's always a woman behind a man's success, there's always a woman behind a man's downfall. So we know that through history. History has taught us a woman is most of the time is behind, right? Is a big motivation. And when the whole news came up, Mitchell Johnson was pretty pissed off with Candice, because in one of the columns earlier, Mitchell Johnson had said that there was a big news about David Warner and how his team, how he's struggling and why whether he should play in the team and blah blah blah. So there was a lot of talk about his position in the team. And his wife came and said that kind of supported her husband and said that well, if you're going to take out David Warner, who are you going to replace him with? I think that was kind of too bold. It's kind of saying like Australia does not have a replacement for David Warner. I mean, okay, he's a great player, whatever, but you can't say things like like that. It's not your club, it's not your club team or your family team where there is no replacement for somebody. There's always 50 players waiting to get that Aussie cap. So for for Candice to make that comment, I feel was a little bit too she was supporting her husband and the love and all that, we get it, but you don't say that openly because you're kind of saying this to Australia, right? That well, if you take out David Warner, who's gonna replace David Warner? Who? Oh. And so Mitchell Johnson then commented and said, well, if you are going to have players based on their past performance, well, then Dennis Lillee should be playing because he had a great record and Ponting had a great record at number 3, so even they should be playing. So there was a bit of a you can kind of say like a bit of a online chatter or online fight or whatever. And then later that evening, David Warner sends a nasty text to Mitchell Johnson. Now, that text, we don't know because it was a personal text which came on Mitchell Johnson's phone. Mitchell Johnson has not shared, but he just said that it was a nasty text. And maybe, on the lines of, maybe he said, don't involve my wife, stay away from my wife, blah, 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 maybe some personal remark, whatever. So that really triggered Mitchell Johnson. And that is why he then came out in public and really made a mockery. And really, it was like a rant, it was a vicious bite, whatever you want to call it. It was pretty bad, right? So now, after that whole incident, David Warner, he kind of really, he said that it is what it is, and we're just looking forward to a nice test match with Pakistan, and I think that was it. Yeah, Mitchell Johnson also said that Bunnings, which is a warehouse, which is a big store, they sell all kind of stuff in Australia. Bunnings will be out of sandpaper because all the spectators will buy sandpaper and then will be waving it when David Warner plays his last test in Sydney. So it was kind of like very bitter, personal, and kind of silly as well. If you think about from the larger perspective, it kind of just got like two teenagers on Instagram having a bit of a go at each other. This is what I feel. This is my personal opinion. So that was it. Now, obviously, David Warner, who's going to be playing his last test match in Sydney, I think it leaves a bad taste in the mouth, right? Because now you're going to feel, And the best way to give reply to this kind of a situation is through your bat. And that's what David Warner has done today. He is still playing. He is 150 not out. I don't know what Mitchell Johnson is thinking, but this definitely proves that David Warner is a great player. Because when a situation like this happens, the players who are not mentally strong, they usually collapse. They usually cannot play because it starts playing mind games and they're not able to focus, right? And the real good players who are headstrong, they know how to give it back. And I can see Mitchell Johnson now in the commentary box, so that's pretty insane. So I don't know how Mitchell Johnson is feeling. Maybe David Warner should thank Mitchell Johnson for kind of, giving him that extra bit of a, push in the gut. Go for it, mate. And he went for it and he scored a century. And maybe he's looking pretty good, pretty solid. Maybe he will score a double century. But yeah, this is how the whole thing unfolded. David Warner should, in my opinion, should have one of the best series. He should get man of the series, score a bucket load of runs, and I think that is the best way that you can reply to this kind of situation. So I think that is it from me. Those are my thoughts. The match is still on. David Warner still playing. Great day. 295 for 3, 70 overs. So there's still a good 20 overs left. Yes, he could easily get to his double century. Probably make a review of the match later tonight or tomorrow. But thank you for watching. Let me know what you guys think about this drama and David Warner. My hats off to that guy for scoring this unbelievable run and showing how strong he is. So go ahead, mate. Keep it up and keep watching. Thank you so much. Please subscribe, like, and do all the good stuff.